Hi, I'm Rebecca Shein. I am a faculty in the Human Rights and Social Justice program, and I'm really happy to get a chance to chat with Eesha, who's a student in the program. I miss all the students. I wish I could hang out with you in my office, but this will have to do. So, Eesha,
Hello.
hi.
I apologize for my voice. I'm getting over a cold,
Oh,
so
no.
my voice is nice and gravelly today.
Well, at least not COVID, I hope.
Well, I got tested, but it doesn't look like COVID, so fingers crossed.
Um, so, as with Julia, I think we'll start just by asking you what brought you to Carleton, what brought you to the Human Rights Program?
So I have kind of a unique story for coming to Carleton. My dad actually works at Carleton. So I've grown up in Ottawa. I've basically grown up on campus. I spent a lot of time as a kid, even on campus. My dad had this job like my entire life. So even as like a little like baby, I remember coming to campus with my parents and walking by the river or going for lunch in the caf or any of that. So that was an interesting experience. So I always felt really connected to Carleton. And so when the time came to choose a university, it felt like a very obvious choice for my undergrad. And then for human rights, I actually didn't come to Carleton with human rights in mind. I'm in the journalism program, so Carleton has a very, very good journalism program, so that was one of the reasons I actually ended up picking Carleton. But if you're in the journalism program, you have to do another minor or major with your degree. And so I ended up kind of exploring first year. I took courses from a few different degrees, including like poli-sci, neuroscience, because I felt like it, and then human rights. And from first year, it's the human rights program that really pulled me in and really like captured my interest. And then I ended up picking that as my second major to go along with journalism.
Well, that's a really common experience that I particularly love as a teacher, is having students who didn't have a plan, who then, come and take a course and get really excited about what they're learning and then wind up in the degree. Your experience might be a little unique on this since you grew up on campus, but I wonder how you found the sort of Carleton community or your transition to being a student here and the human rights student community particularly.
Yeah, the human rights student community, I think in particular, is like all of Carleton is so welcoming, so amazing. But I feel like the human rights degree in particular, perhaps because of what we're learning, is particularly both open and accepting, and at the same time willing to have an interesting conversation with you. Like it's filled with like these amazingly kind, smart people who at the same time will not be afraid to debate with you on really important topics. And I feel like as a student, that's so important for me, at least. I feel like as an environment, that's such a great environment to be in, to feel safe enough to be able to talk about these really important topics that we're learning about in the human rights program. So I think for the program that we're studying, it's such a conducive environment built by both the profs and all the students for learning this type of thing.
That's really nice to hear. And certainly as a professor, you see that among the students, especially when I'm in fourth year classes. I'll see, students who've been taking classes together for 4 years, and they've got a good kind of vibe with each other. It's really, like, we enjoy that too as teachers. Can you tell me something about either your favorite course or your favorite learning experience or your favorite assignment, things that have really stuck out for you in your time in human rights?
Yeah, I've had a few favorite courses, and I think that's because something that's really special about the human rights program is it's not just human rights courses. It actually encompasses courses from a lot of related degrees at Carleton. So I've taken courses in the Women and Gender Studies department, in the Law department, in the Poli-Sci department, and all just within my human rights degree. I think one of my all-time favorite courses that I've taken was called Feminism, Activism, and Human Rights. And it was a particularly practical course. We did a lot of hands-on learning in that course, which isn't something I was expecting out of a human rights course at all, because that's not what my other courses had been like. But what was really cool about that course is we had assignments like we had an activism assignment where we had to go out and actively participate in some sort of activism event and then come back and write a reflection on it. And this was in February of this year, before COVID and all that happened. And so I attended one of the protests in Ottawa for the Wet'suwet'en crisis, and ended up writing about that. And both the protest was such a cool experience to actually be able to go and participate in something like that, and then for that to be an assignment was especially amazing. And there were so many other things we did in that course as well. We went to an art gallery to look at Indigenous art that was on display in Carleton's own art gallery. We had an assignment to go see an Inuit play that was on by one of Ottawa's theater companies. And so it was a very practical course, and I feel like I learned so much from it because I got to actually experience what human rights is trying to teach. And so that in particular was a course that just stood out so much for me.
Well, it sounds like that course also kind of put you in the Ottawa community a little bit too, right? The things that were going on culturally and politically in Ottawa. Do you want to say a little more about what it's been like? I mean, I know you grew up here, but what it's been like, what it's like to live in Ottawa as a student, and the sort of connections, like campus community connections, that you might have experienced?
Yeah, for sure. Human rights, I think, while we're learning about all these concepts and things that happen in human rights, we have to look at the real world side of it as well. And the real world side of it is the activism, the intersectionality between different groups that are trying to gain the rights that they deserve. And I think being in Ottawa is it's really a privilege in that Canada's capital sees a lot of this discourse about human rights. Having Parliament here, I think a lot of big protests, a lot of big conversations around human rights take place right here in Ottawa, and we have this amazing opportunity to be able to physically participate in that because we're studying where we are.
Mm-hmm. You touched on this a little bit with regard to your favorite course, but can you tell us a little bit more about some of the skills that you think that you've acquired, or like challenges that you feel like you've met that you feel proud of coming out of that you know you'll take with you with your degree?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest skills that the Human Rights Department has taught me is not to just take everything at face value, to always be criticizing and thinking for myself about every concept. No matter what I learned in human rights, no matter what I was taught, I was never in my human rights degree has somebody told me this is right, this is the only way to think, and this is what you have to believe. That's never been said by any prof that I've had in the human rights program. Everything we've learned has been, we've come at it from this perspective of questioning it, criticizing it, asking is this really the best way to think about this topic? And I think that's really, really important, and a really important skill that I will carry even beyond this degree, to be able to think critically about anything that's put in front of me, and not just take it as it is, to always want to improve something or look at it from a different angle. I think that's a really important skill to have.
Right. And if you think back to your first year, what are the kind of things that you found most surprising or most challenging? If you were sort of going to give yourself some advice for, joining Carleton or beginning an undergraduate degree, what would you tell yourself?
I think I would tell myself to get involved as much as possible. I know coming into university, it's pretty scary, and I was very much like, oh my God, grades, courses, I can only focus on this one thing. And so I spent a lot of time being very much, and of course, focusing on your classes and your grades is important, but I spent a lot of time, especially in first year, in my own little bubble. And I think it's really important to create a, to involve yourself within your university community, whether that be like trying to actually actively participate in courses and actually having discussions with people, excuse me, to be joining clubs at Carleton and participating in different things that way, or to trying to make friends with people in your courses. I think it's really important to be involved, and it's just, it helps out so much in the future as well. If you make connections with people in your program right from first year, you have people to help you through the next 3 years as the program gets harder, right? You want that support. You want to know people in your program who are going through the same courses you're going through, or are having the same experiences you're having, and to have that support both in studying and also just having people who know what you're going through. But also making those connections with professors is really important as well, because they're there to help you. And if you don't step forward and make those connections with your professors, they won't know to give you a hand when you need it. So I think it's really, really, really important to make connections with people in your program and as well as the Carleton community.
Great. Okay, one last question. I think you're pretty close to graduating. I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but what are your plans? What are you hoping to do next, do you think?
Yeah, I'm still in third year, so I have about half of my degree, a little less than half of my degree left. But my current plan, hopefully, is law school. I know it's kind of, I'm going from like journalism and human rights to law, but my hope is to be able to practice law from some sort of human rights perspective, potentially something like immigration law or any law really that has to do with human rights is the goal. So yeah, I'm looking at law school once I'm done this degree.
Great. All right, it's been really nice to chat. I think we're going to turn things over, but hope you feel better soon.
Thank you.